This episode is brought to you by CBS All Access. If you don't already subscribe to CBS All Access, please use our affiliate link by going to talkthroughmedia.com/CBS. Using our affiliate link gives us a little credit, which helps us to keep bringing you great content. U.S. residents only.
Hi, this is Brian, and this is our February 2021 Patreon call, where we mostly talk about Star Trek Discovery Season 3, a little bit about Lower Decks, and maybe a little touch about Picard, but mostly it's Discovery Season 3. Attending the Patreon call and participating are, of course, my co-host, Ruthie, fellow hosts from other Talk Through Media podcasts, LT from NC. LT, of course, is my co-host on the Walking Dead Talk Through, and Kim Vogley of Rebinged DS9. And we also had Jeff, X-Force 11, who I didn't properly compliment during the Patreon call for his many voicemails. I think he sent us in a voicemail for every single episode where we were covering a show in 2020. So we also had Jeff from Idaho, Robert, new Patreon subscriber from Austria, and of course, last but not least, Fred from the Netherlands. And we will hopefully be getting back to these monthly. This will be released to the Patreon feed first of all, and then roughly in the next couple of weeks we'll release it as episode 61 on the Star Trek Discovery podcast feed. But Patreon subscribers get it first, and if you would like to become a Patreon subscriber, you can go to patreon.com/Brian and Ruthie, where you can contribute just $1 a month and you get access to these episodes. And we'll be doing many more, actually. I should also mention that this was recorded using the Zoom app, which, of course, many of you have used during this pandemic. But unlike most of our recordings, which are recorded separately, where we record each individually and then combine them together, this is just using the Zoom recording. So the quality is not quite up to spec, but it's pretty good. And I don't think you'll have any major complaints with it. So with that, here is our call-in show. Talk to you soon.
Hey, everybody. It's been a while since we've done a Patreon call, and we keep on saying we're going to do one. And so here we are. We're going to talk about, pretty much whatever you guys want to talk about. But of course, we are going to discuss season 3 of Discovery. And Kyle will be joining us later. He's in a meeting right now, but when he's off, he will come in, and we can also talk some Lower Decks. So no strict agenda or anything with this. So I'll just put it out there and say, like, what did everybody think of Discovery Season 3? And how do you think that it compares against Season 1 and 2? And the other things we've had so far in the Trek revival of Lower Decks and Picard. So whoever wants to start talking, I guess you can raise your hand or just start talking.
Well, since nobody else is going to go, I guess I'll jump in. I think season 3 is still way better than season 1. I think that as a whole, it's marginally better than season 2. I think that we've established through the season load of podcasts that there were individual things that were problematic. There were a few plot points that I wish they would have handled in a different way, but taken as a whole, I have to give them credit that I think that they are getting their legs under them. I think that they are beginning to grow their beard out. I'd say that season 3 was, again, good as a whole. There's some individual things that I have problems with, just because of some of the way they handled the plot elements. There's some things that they sort of spun up, presented, and just kind of dangled that we never really got any resolution on.
Yeah.
But in the end, I would say that they did a good job. I mean, I liked it end to end, but there are still some things with like how they handled the burn and some of that. The deal with losing Non and the seed ship. I've heard people complain about the 2 mirror episodes, which I would say if you look at them independently as just 2 episodes in the arc, that I think they were well done and they served a purpose. But, as far as continuity goes, I think that there was a little bit of a disconnect there, that they had to put it in because they had to do something with Giorgio. I like the elements of some of the future Starfleet. We still have a lot of questions about things concerning, the Federation and Navarre and some of the other salient plot points that go along with the Federation state in the future. We still don't know who David Cronenberg is supposed to be, but like I said, I enjoyed it as a whole. But if you start dissecting it, there are things that I have lots of questions about, and I'm sure that once we all start jumping in, that there are things that we could hammer individually as far as bits and pieces. But that's not to say that I'm going to cast away my love of Discovery and say that it's bad and this is a horrible, horrible thing.
Well, about that last point, LT, we need some stuff for the next season. So,
well, yeah.
So not all the answers are there yet, and I think that's a good thing. I don't know who is all listening to this, just us later or other Patreons. Perhaps we should introduce ourselves because by now they should know all these voices, but perhaps we should do a little round of famous people here. Well, I introduced LT, and I'm Fred from the Netherlands. So,
yeah, and I'm obviously Brian, and we have Ruthie and Jeff X Force 11, Kim, who of course from the Rebinged DS9 podcast, our other Jeff with a J, and new Patreon, and I know Robert from the Portal 47. Robert, who's also on the European continent. So you're not alone this time, Fred.
You're in Germany, Robert?
I'm in Vienna, in Austria.
In Vienna, in Austria.
I pretty much snuck in at the last moment in Patreon for this one. Just recently subscribed, but I'm subscribed to about 5 Patreons now, so I'm going low level on all of those, just to be in stuff like Seventh Rule and Delta Flyers and stuff like that.
So
mission log stuff
and
like that.
You don't do Facebook, right?
No, I'm not on Facebook. Just out of philosophical reasons. So
Good for you.
I miss out on a lot of stuff that's going on there, but I don't feel like I want to be on Facebook just because it's Facebook.
I'm actually the same way, but I'm on Facebook as much as I am because of podcasting. Like when Ruthie and I, started up the Walking Dead talk through, suddenly it's like, well, got to be on Facebook a lot. So
I rejected all the other ones, though. I was like, no, one is good enough for me. I'm not going to go deep dive into all the social medias. I just can't. I don't have enough time.
Well, initially, I refused to go to Twitter and Facebook as well, but I just had to, because if I was contributing to several podcasts and was sending the hosts emails and just didn't get reaction. Even my attachments with audio files were not noticed. So then I got on Facebook and I suddenly got answers.
Yeah.
So it's you have to sometimes not to really be on the social media, but just connect via direct messages, and then you can connect.
Yeah. I have a Twitter account. I just don't use it very often.
Yeah, same here. I have a Twitter account. I'm reading a little bit sometimes. I'm pushing the like button sometimes and not posting.
I used to use Twitter all the time in its first 3 or 4 years of existence. I used it constantly. And now I hardly use it at all. I barely post on there. And I have to remember to post for the podcast. And I think several weeks we didn't post anything. I need to go back and do that. Okay, so I'm going to push things back to Discovery here.
Be bold.
Kim, what about you? What did you think of season 3?
I'm afraid to say.
Say it. Let's do it.
Yep.
I liked it. And the reason I'm afraid to say is I know Ruthie in particular didn't like it.
That's okay.
And but it made me stop listening to your podcast, and it bums me out.
No.
And part of it is because of the pandemic. And I just there's only so much I can take of things that just aren't happy. I just can't. And I feel bad that it doesn't make you happy. And I get really kind of wound into your unhappiness about it.
Oh no.
And so I have really quite enjoyed it. There were a few things in the season that I didn't like. Of course, it's Star Trek and it's fiction. There's always something you don't like. But I mean, I have really enjoyed it. And I think what has helped me a lot is my husband, James, finally started watching it and has just loved it. So that's given me someone to talk to about it in my house, which I didn't have before. So I'm happy that we can talk about it and enjoy it. But honestly, I feel bad that you guys haven't enjoyed it as much.
I wouldn't say that for me. I find that sometimes I start nitpicking it to death, and it sounds like I don't like stuff, but I didn't like it as much as season 2, but I did enjoy it quite a lot. I think there were things that they could have done better, but I did enjoy it. And I certainly enjoyed it more than I did with Picard. Although when I go back to Picard, it's like the first 8 episodes of Picard, I freaking loved. Yeah. But I was so disappointed in that episode 9 and to a lesser extent 10 that it just threw off my overall evaluation of the season. But I would say I would say on the whole, I really did enjoy season 3. And I think when I go back and do our rewatch, that'll come out. But anyway, sorry. Sorry to hear that.
I feel bad. I feel like if we had conversations about it, there would have been good conversations. But it's hard on a podcast because you're just listening. And so there's no interaction and discussion.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of struggled with it. But it made me think about the things that I say about Deep Space Nine.
I just wanted to say
and
that.
And people who love it. And I get that. And I totally get that now. And I think as the episodes we've released are behind kind of where we are. But as we get to the end of season 2, there's some really good episodes as we get there. So things start getting more positive.
Actually, Kim, I wondered, because you can be quite critical about Deep Space Nine. And I actually
Yep.
was amazed that you kept going on,
especially
that you didn't stop. And
especially
big compliment,
Well,
big compliments, big compliments about that, by the way.
But people don't have to listen, right? And it's the same for Ruthie. It's the same for her. She's absolutely allowed her opinion, and I'm absolutely allowed not to listen to it, I guess.
Sure. I don't like being negative and not liking something. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. It doesn't make me happy. I'm not one of those people who are like, oh, I get to again.
I have to put this in the context too. On the whole, you could say that Ruthie didn't enjoy season 3 nearly as much. But when I compare this to, say, season 7 of The Walking Dead, it was painful podcasting with her during it. Like
painful podcasting.
Yeah. I mean, there would be entire episodes where I couldn't get her to say anything. Like the only things that she said was in reading the feedback, and it was awful.
It was hard watching it the second time through too. I didn't like it. But I got past it.
Yeah.
So my stepmom wanted to watch The Walking Dead, so I said I would watch it with her. And we got to those episodes, and I just sucked it up and watched them as quick as we could. I think we got through them in like a week.
Let's Jeff, X-Force 11. We'll go to you. What'd you think of? I have to qualify that now, of course.
Yeah.
Hey, you got a new microphone, don't you?
No, I've had it.
Had that?
Just
Pile?
Yeah. So
Cool.
It's nice. The things I liked about this season was that we got to dig into the bridge crew more. I thought that's been lacking in the first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And we started to get more flavor. It's not to where I like it to be, but then again, you got to think about these are short seasons. They only have so much story that they can spread around. But I like that we're getting a story that goes beyond just Michael. And so I like the fact that we're getting to see some insight into the bridge crew and what makes them tick. And so I enjoyed those aspects of it. To me, I really thought that this season was maybe a little bit more disjointed than the last season because they had these different storylines that they were going through. And if you were looking at a 26 season, episode season, then you could have things more filled out and these things wouldn't filled. So, here's this plot, here's this plot, here's this plot. And then you feel like if you liked a certain plot, you felt like it was squished in. And if you didn't like it, you're like, oh my goodness. But I think, it felt a little more disjointed that way. Whereas the last season, season 2, felt had a little more sync and flow to it. So there were good aspects and negative aspects to it. I am very much looking forward to seeing, now that we've come into this time period and we've come into looking at stuff, how things are going to play out. So I'm interested to see that. So for me, I liked it a tad less than season 2. But I still enjoyed it mainly because we got to see character beats over more action. And so my complaints are mainly concerned where some of the stuff, the character beats kind of got drawn out a little bit too much in some of those plots that I didn't particularly care for. So that's kind of where I stand.
Did you think, Jeff, that it felt a little bit more episodic?
Yeah, to me, it felt like there were, pods of episodes. So you had, less flow through it. So you had, these episodes. And so I would like a little more tie through that you have, throughout all the episodes. Whereas, the episode where we were dealing with Saru and his kinfolk there, it was so tied on to that you kind of felt disconnected from the rest of the plot. So, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I feel a little bit like they're still in a phase where they need to figure out how to write Star Trek in this new format of not being episodic.
Mm-hmm.
It feels a little bit to me like they have one big idea that they want to land at, like this time with the burn caused by the little child, because that was a great idea.
Yeah.
They thought, because of the Le Guin story and all that stuff that they came from. And then they feel like, but it's too little for the whole thing. So we need to put another thing in, and we have another idea that we can fit, and we have another idea that we can fit in.
Yeah.
And then they have multiple parallel things, and they have not really figured out how to do that in a consistent way yet.
Yeah.
That said, I felt more closure with this season than with any other live action season of the new stuff so far.
Cool.
Because they actually managed to, those things that fit into closing up in this season, I think they touched on almost all of those to close them up. I mean, they left stuff open for the next season. That's good. But those things that had to be closed in this story, I think they mostly called to actually close up, which is one thing I completely disliked in Picard, that they did not tie up those things at the end that would have needed to be tied up in this one, because they don't fit as a thing to go over to a next season, in my opinion. Like capturing or actually doing something with the bad guy, like Agnes, like solving the Agnes thing, really, and stuff like that. I felt like they put closure into things, into those storylines in Disco, but it was in season 3. But overall, I heard this from others. They left for the amount of stories they had in there, they left little time for those to breathe. And I think it would have been good to do more show not tell, and to in terms of actually showing us stuff and not just talking about them, and go more into the characters. But overall, I think it's probably it's a season I really liked.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's my favorite Star Trek yet, but it's something I really liked.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. Jeff, I don't know, the other Jeff, I don't know if you're able or ready to say anything about season 3, but oh, there you are.
Yeah, I was just here as kind of a live audience, I thought.
Well, if you don't have anything you want to say,
well, I will say this: I probably, of everyone, know the least of the Star Trek canon, and have watched the least. And quite honestly, I watched an episode 3 times. I still can't remember it, and I don't know if I've too many drugs in my life. But I enjoyed the season. I really enjoyed listening to the podcast when Ruthie bashes it, because I find that like very perversely entertaining. When Brian points out something good and Ruthie tells him what's wrong with the point, and then he realizes he's wrong. So I do like that. I like that balance.
That does happen a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's happened a few times. Yeah.
Doesn't happen so much the other way.
No. The thing that I'm entertained by it, and I'm probably more entertained because I don't pick up on the nuance of the inconsistencies maybe with other series or whatever, and so that in a way that kind of helps, because I can just kind of watch it as for that entertainment value. The thing that really I think disappointed me, or still disappoints me, is the writing and the dialogue. It's just almost overly dramatic, and it's not real clever, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
In watching all the other series, and right now I'm in I just watched Voyager, and now I'm watching DS9. I had never watched it before, and so I didn't understand when the Enterprise made it back to the Federation, whatever that home world, home base thing is. And everyone's going, oh, the USS Nog, that was great, and the Eisenberg. And I had no idea who Nog was. And I started watching DS9. And when I first watched the first couple episodes or first season, I was like, Nog. Like, why is everybody crazy over this, this little shit? I mean, he's really, he's annoying. Well, by season 6, I'm like, I get why everybody's going crazy over the USS Nog. I understand it now. So I think that I don't maybe appreciate some of the nuance because of that. But like I said, the dialogue, it's just, there's a lot of sort of overly dramatic stuff, and not a lot of the sort of subtle and overt humor maybe in like some of the other series that's kind of interwoven. And I think that's why, like, I'm a big Jet Reno fan. I think that's why a lot of us really love Jet Reno, because it is, it's that clever, funny, and that's why I like Giorgio too, that clever, funny, witty, sharp humor, and the rest of them, seem overly dramatic. And the other thing is, and I did not like the mirror episodes. I like mirror episodes in general, but I like them when the characters so well that when they go into the mirror, you're really interested to see what's their mirror personality going to be. And wow, they're so different. Well, you went into the mirror episode, and for the most part, so you see an evil Reese. Well, so I don't really know anything about Reese. I mean, he sits on the bridge and he responds occasionally, and tells them that they've got a signal coming in. But I don't. Yeah. So to see him evil, or to see one of the other guys fighting or whatever, it just doesn't really grab me like it would if we knew those. And so it seems like maybe they are trying to make this so big and jam so much into it that some of those things where every other series, the best thing about the series, I think at the end of it is, you feel like you were there with the crew and that the crew and have this like strong feeling towards them that for the most part, I don't have that feeling even after 3 seasons with like the Discovery crew, like I do when I think about the other series that I've watched. So that's kind of my general observations.
Cool. Ruthie?
What you say about the mirror stuff makes sense. I agree with that.
Well, see, the cool thing, Jeff, is that you can be our neutral observer, because if you don't have as much front loading as far as lots of exposure to all the series, then maybe you can look at it with a less jaundiced eye than some of us would.
That does happen when I've become very educated, like listening to the feedback and listening to the show. And sometimes I think, man, that's a little nitpicky, just a little.
Yep.
That's how the nitpicking Brian voice started.
Okay, let's kill that guy.
Nobody likes him.
Fred and I are killing him.
Let me just say one more thing too. It just reminded me when Fred said something that when I talk about the overly dramatic part of that, like the Michael Burnham, that whole her delivery of the lines and the whispering and
don't talk about it.
But it's that sort of thing where like trying to make every piece of dialogue so dramatic, and it doesn't have to be like that, because then when everything is, nothing is.
Yeah.
So and the point is, when you listen to an interview with her, she is so energetic, and she's so involved and so enthusiastic, and
I have to think it's
even emotional. Then she just puts it in her roles. And I talked about it with Brian, and Brian said that in her role in The Walking Dead, she does
did that in The Walking Dead. I don't remember.
Not in the same way, but she does do it. Like I remember her last couple of episodes. I think she did it quite a bit. It's been a while since I've gone back and watched it. But
I think she probably.
It's been less time for me, but I still don't remember.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think she probably wants to put a lot of emotion into it, and that's what's coming out of that.
I just don't know.
But she has that. Come on. She has directors, and they're different for different episodes.
Yeah.
They can direct her. They allow her, but because she's star, perhaps, they say, okay, this is just you. Go on with it. And it's not that bad.
She's crying again.
It's not that bad.
She doesn't cry as much as she whispers.
It's not that bad if it's 1 or twice in an episode, but if it's 5 times, And okay, if this is her style of showing emotion, and you get a new director for a new episode, it's also strange when it's not there all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So she can do it. Yeah. Away, so far away.
Oh,
No,
gosh.
really. But actually, my wife was more disturbed by it than I was. But when she said about it, then from that point onward, when there was a scene with her whispering again, then we go together. We repeated her.
It's like sometimes, like when something gets hinted at, or you have it pointed out, you can't unsee it after you've seen it the first time. And after you said that,
actually, that was one of the reasons, Brian, why I was reluctant to say it, because when my wife said it, okay, I noticed it, and it disturbed me a little bit. Yeah,
go
back.
That's always my favorite Ruthie thing.
What's that?
The one time that Ruthie said, "Don't point it out to me, because once I see it, I'll never be able to unsee it."
Yeah, that's right.
That's true. And that's why I waited quite a long time. That's why I waited quite a long time to sit
for a while then.
Before I said it on the podcast.
So it's been almost a month, Ruthie, since the last episode. What about you? Like, have your opinions changed, or anything you want to say overall for the season?
I think I don't know. I mean, I just kind of feel like it started off so well, and then I loved that first episode. I thought it was so great, and I think maybe that set me up for failure because I had unrealistic expectations, maybe, or maybe they weren't unrealistic expectations because they were, I was only expecting what they had given me in the first episode, and then suddenly it just, I don't know, fell apart or something. I don't know what happened, and I, try and manage my expectations. I'm a lot happier when I have no expectations about something, that I'm pleasantly surprised. Or
you usually do a better job of that than I do.
I know.
Because I get really upset when my expectations don't get met.
Yeah.
But Ruthie, didn't it get better at the end again? I had a bit the same feeling, that the beginning was very good, and I had a middle part which I didn't like so much. Actually, the terra firma had a mirror universe I liked, but not for 2 episodes. I found it too dark for 2 episodes. Yeah. And at the end, I started liking it again.
It wasn't the mirror episodes that, while I didn't necessarily really enjoy them that much, I think, I don't know. I was just wondering, I was thinking about this as we were talking. I'm not sure, but I'm like, well, was it Emperor Georgiou that I liked for the whole show then? Because when she left, that's when I was like, meh. So I don't know. I didn't really like the explanation of the burn thing. And I feel like they dragged that storyline out a little bit too long. And there were a lot of things that they just didn't explain that didn't make any sense to me. And I just like, why all of the founding member nations or worlds or whatever of the Federation just bounced out. That makes no sense. And if that's the case, why
hear about all of them?
It didn't. Sorry,
we didn't hear about all the founding members.
Well, we didn't hear. There was one world I think we didn't hear about, but
what of the Tellarites?
I want to hear from the Tellarites.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe the Tellarites are still there. My bad. I misspoke. But
wasn't there a Tellarite? Didn't they say that there was a Tellarite exchange at one point? We didn't see it, but
well, so why are there still humans in Starfleet if Earth left Starfleet or left the Federation? Basically, that doesn't really make any sense. And I just
then you should watch then you should watch The Expanse, where we have a human population on Mars and a human population in the belt and a human population on Earth, and they all quarreling with each other and have wars with each other. So it doesn't have to be Earth.
The Expanse.
Okay, it doesn't have to be Earth.
There aren't any other races in the Expanse than humans that we know of right now. So that doesn't really, I mean, that to me makes more sense than what happened in the third season of Discovery. In the Expanse, they don't have the same instantaneous, more or less, travel and communication that they do in the Star Trek world. So of course those people drifted apart. That's just natural. That's the way of things. But it doesn't make sense to me for Earth to have left the Federation and for why are those people still in the, I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, English is still a main language of the EU, even though the English native population in the EU is now very small. So, yeah.
We can start talking German. No problem, Robert. I have a German wife.
An ambition. That's about it. That's all I know.
Okay. No, but yeah, I think there are more humans outside Earth, even in the Federation, than on Earth.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Maybe, but my point is, why did Earth leave? Why did the Federation leave Earth?
Well, I have a theory on that, and I think it actually fits with what we have seen in, recent political history. We have waves, and this happened to be a conservative wave. Everything kind of retreated, much like they did the last 4 years, and in the UK, obviously there's been kind of a similar retraction of things, and I think that's what happened. It's like this ebb and flow, and there were hundreds of years of the Federation being, or Earth being, very liberal minded and welcoming and all that stuff, and now we have a century of retraction and xenophobia. Yeah, I mean, and they're even xenophobic on people that are living on Titan, right? They don't even realize the fact that they are humans, and treat them like pirates and whatever, and turns out that they're just humans. So that's my take.
The interesting thing about sinus, and you say it's more like sinus, is me wondering for the next season. We're not talking yet about the next season, but now Discovery is going to bring all this dilithium to all the worlds. If you get in this upflow from departing from the Federation and connecting to the Federation, if the Discovery is bringing all the dilithium to all the worlds, we get the counter action again, and that more and more worlds are going to connect, and that we even get a kind of story again about traveling through space and discover new cultures, even not the cultures that were previously in the Federation, but even new ones.
Mm-hmm.
So we get back to the 60s, and we get a Star Trek.
And we didn't really see any other than the Kelpians. We didn't really see any species that we hadn't seen before. They were all species, I think, that we had seen, even if it was a limited seeing them. Like the Betelgeuse guy that was going after Book at the beginning. Okay, book species. I'm not going to get it right. Qui-Gon? Did I get it right? I don't know. Yeah. Wow, I got it right.
But I think we had in this season also several species that were in Star Trek before, but not necessarily in the Federation already.
Right.
And there were even, like Saru was amazed that the Kelpians did join the Federation, because if you go back in the history, the Kelpians were not a part of the Federation.
Yeah, and you saw, like, it wasn't just you had humans that were on Earth and weren't part of, they were just part of United Earth. There were humans that were in the Federation, Starfleet, and there were also humans on part of the Emerald Chain. We saw quite a few of them, including what's his name?
Mr. Hand.
Mr. Hand. the
sorry, or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's right. And Aurelio, the scientist.
Aurelio,
yeah. So we definitely had a lot of those. We had them all over the place. So I guess in a way that makes sense, though, because
they said that the Federation was falling apart even before the burn. So I hope that in season 4 or 5 or somewhere in this stretch that we're coming into, that they will go into and try to clear up what happened there. I mean, now that they're going out, now that this burn thing is solved, basically, now that there is the chance to actually work on what was the issue underneath it that even was there before that.
Yeah.
And that could be, as Alex Kurtzman said, the big bad of season 4 will be not a person or a species per se. Maybe this thing that was behind the Federation falling apart is the big bad of season 4. I don't know. Just one idea.
Yeah.
It's also logical, I think, if you are just thinking theoretically about expanding the Federation. Is that infinitive, like the universe? Are we going to unite the whole universe in the sense of just thinking of getting it bigger and bigger, like the Roman Empire or whatever, bigger and bigger and bigger? At a certain point, you cannot get bigger and you fall apart partly again.
Yeah.
That's just a natural process. So I'm not wondering or are not amazed, I have to say, that in 1,000 years, the Federation first got a little bigger, and then got smaller again. I'm not amazed about it.
Well, you could make the argument that some of those bricks were laid in Picard.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Because of all the discord of the Romulan supernova, both from the Romulan perspective and then internally, plus you had all the things that happened with the synth attacks that, I agree with what you're saying, Fred, exactly, that there's a point where logistically you can only support, so much real estate and so many worlds as a governance standpoint, just width and breadth and span. And then we saw that there was rumorings and rumblings and people wanting to pull out and people being dissatisfied over what had happened with the Romulan diaspora. So, I mean, it makes sense that they've laid that groundwork. And, to your point too, about any government body that, the UN's not a great example of it, but how many people, only participate because it's in their, it's sort of in their interest to kind of keep an ear to the wall to find out what's going on, where they're not really supporting anything. They're just, playing along to play along. And if somebody offered a bigger, better deal, then they would probably move on and go hang out with somebody else that was more aligned to their way of thinking. And when you were talking about humans, it made me think, well, if you look at Enterprise, we had the Terra Nova colony. There were other colonies, even in TOS, they talked about humans out settling other worlds.
Yeah.
So giving our predisposition to move and repopulate ourselves, I don't think it's really hard to think that there are groups of humans out there, considering that, well, what the Andorians need 3 partners to make babies, as the as the old logic goes, and the Vulcans are only doing it every 7 years. So it's
LT.
well, then come on.
I think it was the Denobulans that needed 3, wasn't it? Not the
Well, no, the Denobulans were, but
oh, that's right. No, you're right. You're right.
because you've got Zans, Thans, and there's another one.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think that may be, I don't know if that's actually alpha canon, but it was definitely.
Yeah, that's not on screen canon, I think.
It's definitely in the novels. So
that's possible.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think just to throw this in there before I forget and my ADD gets the best of me, Robert made a really good point. And I think some of the writing choices we see, it almost reminds me that they need a better editor. It's like you got an anthology book that they're all writing. Okay, you all have to write stories about Star Trek, about this ship and this crew, but the tie-ins were not always 100%.
Yeah.
So you got the same story, the same crew, but you almost needed a better editor or a better person on charge of the whiteboard to kind of tie things together more closely. Maybe that's the analogy I'm hitting on.
And I recently heard that in DS9, Ira was a person who always said, okay, we got all those ideas on the whiteboard. Let's reduce them to 1 or 2 big ideas that we're putting into this one story. And then we write stuff oriented on those ideas, and let's trim the fat basically of ideas, even though it's hard because there's you have to let go of your specific idea. But I think that makes more focused storytelling. But then you can easily do that for 1 episode. If you're trying to make an arc for 10 episodes or 13, you basically think, oh, but we can fit all this in. We have a lot of time. And then you try to fit it in, and then you find out, well, I still have too much for this.
Yeah.
That's somewhat the feeling that I get here overall in the storytelling.
Yeah, if they've got somebody heading up the writer's room who is, whether it's a showrunner or somebody who's in there kind of giving an overall vision and then kind of corralling everybody else and kind of steering, you to say, okay, this can fit this aspect, this can fit this aspect. I find that if there's somebody, a lead writer in there, I find that the writing tends to be overall, somebody who's watching the Bible of the show and doing that, things tend to work better. But, with COVID and other stuff, who knows? So,
yeah, there definitely was in this series, Michelle Paradise is definitely head writer, and like her.
Yeah, but she's new in this job, right?
She is, yes, she is. But her first episode was Project Daedalus, which I know was a lot of people's favorite episode of season 2. So I remember that got a lot of 10s, and I wasn't one of them.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that she can lead the room, right?
That's right.
Well, that's true.
That's true. Right, Robert.
Oh, and we've seen that before, like in Walking Dead. People loved Scott M. Gimple for his episodes that he wrote, but not so much for his show running, So, okay, so here's a question that I want to ask each of you, and you don't have an answer, but your favorite either character, plot point, technology, your favorite thing of season 3. I'll start with Fred, who's on my left on screen. So
actually, it's more the whole new setting of the Federation. So actually, I like everybody in the new uniforms. So I like the old people, but in the new uniforms. So that's not really an answer to your question. But I'm really looking forward to Burnham and others in their new function, in their new surrounding, in their new world. And so that's why I liked the last episode actually quite a lot.
Yeah. I think the promise of putting Burnham in the captain's seat It's long time coming, and I think.
And if you ask me a secondary character, because you also can think of a secondary character, I actually like the Admiral. I thought all the time he had a second agenda, and so far we didn't see that. And actually, he was quite a wise leader, I should say.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And he offered after he got rid of his suspicion, he really offered the crew of the Discovery his trust or possibilities to do their thing.
Yeah. I would say you don't have to limit it to one. I just mean don't take an hour in explaining. So, which you didn't, because I want to get to everybody. LT, what about you?
I think if I had to pick one thing for technology wise that I really enjoyed was the notion of the integrated comm badge tricorder communicator.
Yeah.
And the phaser on the sleeve.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Mainly because they don't give them pockets. I'll always go back to my uniform thing. They don't have pockets. They don't have belts. They don't have pouches. So it's easy now that if you need to scan something, you just tap your comm badge. If you need to call home, you just tap your badge. If you need a gun, you just tap the little thing on your sleeve and you got a gun.
Yeah.
So the sidebar to that is the programmable matter. I think it's interesting from a CG perspective, just how they cook those props and do the effects. But the fact that it's something that is almost the next step from the replicator, the fact that you can have an infinitely malleable substance to make what you need. I would be showing my age if I said it's the new Star Trek future schmoo. But
silly putty.
Yeah, or something you
Play-Doh.
can do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got to agree with Fred. I definitely like the Admiral.
Yeah.
I thought that Oded Fair did such a good job of playing that character because, I'd think I'd said it in comments that we had so many people that once you promote them past captain, they turn into something evil. And it was good to see that he held his beliefs, but yet he was open to new things.
That's good that he wasn't a badmiral.
That would have.
I don't think that would have gone over well.
And I'm still sort of intrigued about Kovich starts with a K.
That's his.
Yeah, I think he's the character that I wanted to know more about because every time he did something, it was pretty cool. When people were talking about the way he played the part, is David Cronenberg's got no F's to give. I mean, he just delivered his line. It wasn't like he was trying to be emotional or in the moment, but that's what made the character so cool. That he was just there and he was doing his thing. And it's like, yeah, I wear glasses. They make me look smart. I think that it'll be cool to see what they do with him next season because we know he's going to be back. And they never said what he did. So we don't know if he's like the cigarette smoking man from the X-Files or he's future guy from Enterprise or is he the head of Section 31? Is he the Federation president? Is he, the director of Federation intelligence? Is he
Carl's brother?
I don't know. So yeah, I mean, those are my two favorite characters.
We just got a message that Kyle will not be joining us. So if we talk about Lower Decks, we'll have to do it without him. So okay, Jeff, X-Force 11. What about you?
Like I mentioned earlier, I think getting to dig into who the characters are. I really, of our bridge crew, Detmer and just getting to see little bits and pieces and getting to know who they are beyond just what role they do. So I like the beginning of that. As far as the technology goes, I agree about badges. I like those. I don't particularly care for the design.
Yeah.
But I like the functionality of those and the ability. To the point of the uniforms, I like the uniforms, but it just made me realize that we have seen dress uniforms in Trek that are really formal, but it's almost like they're, the new ones that they got in the end, and even the ones we've seen before, they're all, and LT maybe can back me up, they're more the formal uniforms, and they don't really have real BDUs of, like everyday, the functional uniforms. They're all so, formal and things like that with no pockets that, I'd like to see, some difference there. Like to see, those are fine, but like if you're like in engineering and crawling around, you need something more functionality. So that's something I like to see.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you saw the different uniform with what was it, Lieutenant Willa?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Yeah,
had like the tighter type bodysuit shoulder pad thing going. But you're exactly right that it's like you don't want to be doing work in the motor pool wearing, your class B's, because, a nice uniform, they should have like TOS overalls or something.
And we did see that in
dungarees or something
in the old ones. We did see that in the old ones. They had the ones that didn't have the color and had a different fit, and then the ones that were like that had the lights on them, as sort of like a away team uniform.
The tactical vests.
Yeah.
Because they have it's like almost like a plate carrier that you have the lights on it and a little bit of detail on the chest.
But did we see the future Federation people in action, or did we only actually see the Discovery crew in action? Because the Admiral is just having meetings, so there you can have a formal uniform. So where is the action of the other people of the new Federation? Or will we just see that in the next season, that there will be another uniform, a more handy type of uniform?
I tend to think so. I mean, like I said, we did see that on Discovery. We didn't see a lot of those uniforms that I'm talking about. I'd have to look for a picture. And if somebody wants to look for a picture, I'll do it. I'll do it when the next person talks, but see if I can find one. But we have seen that on Discovery already with the old uniforms. So I imagine that for season 4, we'll see them. But other than the one that you said about Willa, and she had like a gray color as opposed to an operations color. And supposedly there's a medical, the white medical color is there. So instead of there being 3 colors from the 23rd and 24th centuries, now there are 5 colors. So, and on Discovery there was 4. There was gold, silver, copper, or bronze, and white. So,
and exactly to Fred's point, we didn't see any of the future people in engineering.
Right.
All we saw were the staff mooks walking around,
right.
Pointing at screens and signing papers.
Yeah. Except
Discovery doesn't even have an engineering section, because we never saw that.
No, we never really did. Robert, what about you? What was your favorite thing that you would like to highlight?
So I think my favorite I would highlight is that the science stuff makes a little bit more sense in terms of having a thought through it scientifically. I mean, this whole thing with dilithium having a subspace component, okay, that's a new thing. But with that in mind, the science is actually thought through and makes sense. Also, things like prion disease and whatever they fit in, it's really visible that they have Dr. Erin Mack and Dr. Mohamed Noor in for bringing in the science aspects that actually give scientific consistency, at least Star Trek scientific consistency. So I think I would say that as the one highlight on this side. Character-wise, I'm also a big Admiral Vance person. Every episode I was sitting there and saying, please don't make him a Badmiral. Please don't make him a Badmiral. Because I liked him in terms of this is how I envision a well-meaning person in this situation would be. Mm-hmm. He means well. He's just completely in this whole sphere, literally sphere of where the Federation is right now.
Yeah,
and he's so in his day-to-day business that he doesn't have space for the big ideas or for going out there. So that I'm very big on that. As Jeff mentioned, Ovo and Detmer, I love that we see their friendship, and I hope that it will stay a good friendship, because one thing that I think we've seen too little in Star Trek is people who are just good friends and don't have any romantic relationship or stuff, but are just good friends. And I hope that Ovo and Detmer are that.
Yeah, I do too. And, because we have those two good friends on the bridge, and then we have Reese and Bryce, which are two bros.
we see less of their friendship or whatever it is.
But they like smack on the arm kind of friends, kind of like, hey buddy. That's what I always think of. Jeff, the other Jeff, what about you? What anything you want to highlight?
When I think back on it, the moment that just pops into my head is, and my favorite character is Detmer. I like the depth of where they started to go with her, and when she jumped on Book's ship, that scene where she's taking it up against the Osiris ship or whatever, and just flying, and is just such a badass and taking control, and that to me. Like, I'm looking for more of that in the series, and just those moments of kick ass and where you kind of go, yes. And I love, so when I think back of the moments that sticks out in my head, and I just liked those as they developed her. Like, I think about when she was having those issues and they went to see her someone went to talk to her and she was like sparring or training in the gym or whatever. And it just seems like there's a lot of potential there for her to be that, that a pilot, what you kind of expect, like a Top Gun pilot. And so I look forward to next season to see where she goes. But that was probably my favorite scene of the whole series.
Yeah.
Or the whole season.
Yeah, that was a good one. Kim, what about you? You're muted. I don't know if you are able to talk.
I think a couple of things that I really liked about this season. I loved the Mirror episode, and I dropped right before you guys were all going to rag on not liking the Mirror Universe episodes, but I actually really liked them. Maybe in particular, I liked the look of them. I thought the costumes and the eye makeup and the overly dramatic acting, and anytime Michelle Yeoh wears a cape, I'm in. I'm ready to watch it. There was just something about the drama of those episodes that I truly enjoyed, and I got a lot out of that story arc as well. And then, kind of on the flip side, there was some humor, like in particular in the first episode when Michael had that drug. I mean, I laughed so hard, and then at the end of that episode, I can't remember. Since I have no internet, I can't Google anything. I can't remember the name of the character of the guy who was just waiting for someone to Starfleet to find him.
Yeah.
Sahil.
I cried. I mean, I laughed so hard in that episode, and then I cried. And then whenever a show does that to me, I'm pretty hooked. So those are the those are the things really that I liked about this season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, visually everything was great, and the mirror stuff was great when they did it in the first season. It was great here as well, visually.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah, my biggest negative on the mirror universe is just where it was. Like, I would have it. Now thinking about it, I think it may have played better if they just kind of made that at the end, and kind of had Michelle Yeoh for the whole season, and then at the very end they there's something, maybe some piece that they need to go into the mirror universe to get, or something like that. But it end up with her staying, or her, I don't know, her character, saying goodbye. Whereas I think it kind of derailed the plot on the burn and all of that for 2 episodes. Like, things weren't moving in the place. It really, it felt,
they had
felt
to
added
stretch
on.
out getting to the burn, because there was not much story there in getting to the burn.
It felt very tacked on. Like, it's like, oh well, we can get Michelle Yeoh for this season. How do we do that? Oh well, we'll make her go back there and make her. We have to make her a more positive character that people will root for. So let's do this, and it's kind of set up, I think, a lot to like a backdoor pilot to making the Section 31 show, which I think in that way it really worked well. And I think it made her a much better character, but it felt, I don't know, tacked on to me.
That actually wasn't how I saw it at all. And I like that. I appreciated that they broke up the story a little bit. I think because it gave me that a little bit more old school Star Trek-y feel, where every episode doesn't have to be about the burn. And maybe it was because the burn wasn't enough of a story to fill the season. Yeah. That could have been it. But I contend that the character of Giorgio, before she left the mirror universe, was already moving in a direction away from who she was.
Right.
Because all those characters were all talking about it. You've gone soft. You aren't doing things the way that we are used to you doing them, or the way that we do them here. So I felt like, just like Spock way back in Mirror Mirror was already kind of teetering on the edge of something, I felt like she was already kind of teetering on the edge of something as well. And this is something we talk about in the episode that's of Rebinge Deep Space Nine. It's coming out tomorrow. It was the first Mirror episode. And that's something we talk about in there. And I just felt like she was ready for that push. And this is what forced her over that edge.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think the construction they came up with was not too bad, because when we got the last season, I thought, what the heck? This Giorgio is on the Discovery, and she has to do the Section 31 series. How do they do it? And actually, the construction they made was not that bad. I thought, okay, this is believable.
Yeah. And as Kim, you were talking, I have to think about, how do I compare this to Picard and my reaction to Picard? And, on the whole, I would agree this worked better than Picard did. But with Picard, it was so much of 8 great episodes followed by one disastrously horrible episode, and then a fair, so episode that it affected my overall impression of the season. So I would just say that is better constructed than Picard was.
I think we're a lot harder on episodes we don't like when the seasons are so short and when the whole story is serialized, because there were certainly some horrific episodes of TNG, but they're almost like you just sort of laugh at them and you put them in your pocket, and you pull them out to make fun of them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's much harder in this world when you've got 10 episodes or so, and it's like 1 or 2 of them are bad, and you go, oh man, this whole thing was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, TNG season 7 or DS9 season 2, especially the first half of season 2. That's seasons where you have a few really bad episodes. Or
come on, there was Rumpelstiltskin in season 1. That was bad.
You have a few in season 1 of DS9 as well. So I was about to say before, when you made it to the end of season 2, you made it through the hardest parts to watch. It definitely goes up from here.
It's another
step up with season 4. So
it's all uphill from where you're at, Kim. So
yeah, it started with The Wire. Everything got better from The Wire.
Yeah.
The Wire is an awesome episode. Yeah, definitely.
Ruthie, any highlights you want to bring up for season 3?
Yeah, Kim stole mine.
Okay.
The eye makeup.
I'm just kidding. No. No. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely loved the first episode and Michael on the truth serum. I think I rewound and watched that like 3 times the first time I watched it. And then when I watched the episode the second time, I rewound it and watched it over and over again. It just tickled me so much. I love it so much. I really think the more I like watch shows, I want that humor. I'm like, I don't necessarily want it to be a comedy or to be constant yucks, but I also really like it when I get something unexpectedly funny, and that just tickles my funny bone so much that it just makes me laugh so much.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my favorite thing. And I have to second what everybody else said about Oded Fair, because he's my favorite. I love him.
Yeah. And I think you're right. And I think that's one of the reasons why Tilly is so pretty much universally loved, because of her humor and the things that she brings to the table. I guess
as you mentioned humor, just one short piece.
Yeah.
There's one line that's so much stuck in my head that I even wrote the song with that line as the title and about this whole thing, and that's "Cake is Eternal."
Yeah, cake is eternal.
I was sitting here trying to figure out the answer to my own question, and I guess I would say that my favorite part of the season was the relationships, I guess. Giorgio and Burnham, Burnham and Book, the whole thing with Adira, Kober, and Stamets, Burnham and Saru. I didn't so much like the whole Saru and what's his name thing. That just feels kind of weird. But
Sukal.
Yeah, Sukal. But I would say like the character development and the relationships between the characters, I think, were highlight. And I guess I would say, and it's already been said, like the movement to 930 years, the technology that we see, love those like hand cannon things. I wish we got more of those. I wanted to see those again. The personal transporter kind of thing, like you mentioned the 3-way thing, but like that whole ability that we saw in the first episode where Book was able to like just transport them away, and they keep on finding them. I thought that was cool too, something we've never seen before.
Well, it's a little bit similar to this transporter that Data puts on Picard in Nemesis.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'll cheat and say also Unification 3 was probably my favorite episode, but not just the episode itself, but the fact that the Romulans and Vulcans unified, and we got to see that thing from 29 years ago pay off. So I thought that was cool, and something that I would definitely want to highlight. So what about your least favorite thing for season 3? LT, what about you?
I think my least favorite thing was the fact that they did the makeup for Osira with a latex appliance rather than just putting on green makeup.
I still don't understand why.
Well, and I don't either, because it wasn't like, she didn't have a bump. She didn't have a spoon head. She didn't have a nose,
Yeah.
Gotcha. But, didn't have a bumpy nose bridge. There was nothing.
No reason for it.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't see why, unless it was, quote unquote, easier to do that rather than putting on green paint.
I don't see how it could be, though, because I think she said it was like 4 hours to.
Yeah.
So how could it have been?
It's
the only thing I can think of is, we did see Orions in the season 1 of Discovery and in the short tracks, the first batch of short tracks, specifically the one with mud in it. Maybe there was something in the makeup from that caused an issue.
Well, and you could always go back to the whole Buddy Ebsen and the Tin Man and the aluminum paint.
Yeah. She looked more like an android.
Well,
way.
It was the same argument that I had when they were talking about Mary Chieffo playing a Klingon, that she still did a good job acting through the appliances, but she just had so much crap on her face that Doug Jones does a good job of it.
Yeah.
But Saru, you're not expecting a human face. And when I saw her interview, I guess Janet Kidder, for I call the right name, when I saw her interview with Will Wheaton on the Ready Room, she has a lovely, expressive face, and just all the scenes on the show, she had kind of a Jay Leno chin going, and it was
weird around her mouth.
It was weird around her mouth.
It did like this to her face, to her mouth.
It's almost like, if you watched The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, when the Invisible Man was wearing his face bandages, it's almost like you had that margin around her lips, that you could still see her lips moving naturally, but the rest of her face was just kind of stiff. It was static. And that just kind of bugged me. And I think that when, her nephew had the same kind of thing going, and it's like you said, Brian, there's probably a good reason for it, whether it's lighting or, makeup allergies, or the fact that if you just put the green skin on her, it stays green all day and you don't have to touch it up, and it's not shiny and, whatever reason. But it just didn't help me get into her character, because I think if you could have taken that out, some of those scenes that she had may have had more impact if you could have seen her face work. Because
I mean, Orions of the future take some kind of drugs that makes all the muscles in the face lame, and so that's probably the reason.
So you're trying to say that Orions of the future are Botox addicts?
Yeah, exactly.
Or something like that. Yeah.
So they implanted a Botox gene, so you get it.
Yes. But that I think is my big gripe, because I liked the character. I don't know if we can dice bits off of that on how she did and how she was used and how she was written. I like the character, but it just seems like that is one of Ruthie's things. Once I saw it,
I'm sorry.
No. That's, I just remember you talking about it. Of course, Fred said the same thing. Once you see it, you can't not see it.
Yeah.
Once your brain knows it's there, your eye goes to it. And that was the thing. It just, her makeup really just bugged me.
Yeah.
Me too.
Because, I mean, she's a lovely actor. She's got, I think that I've seen her in some other things, and I know that she's very expressive, but it was almost Uncanny Valley.
Yeah.
It was into that. I mean, for God's sake, they had all those, and I almost said toasters again, but you had all the synths and all the synth actors in Picard, and they had body paint. You could tell that they were done up.
Yeah.
So it worked. I mean, even though they had to digitally alter Brent Spiner,
and that's the thing. It's like, if that were the case, why couldn't they have just like done it in effects versus doing it in like physical effects? Like
do it in post.
Exactly. Just change their. Probably would have taken too much time to do that, but like, for example, if let's say they were using the data makeup like they did in Picard, and they just did a color correction and switched them, like I don't know.
mean like the red sand on Kaminar, which is also completely done in post.
Yeah,
it has a completely different color in nature.
Yeah, definitely.
And this ain't.
I saw that beach in real life. It's in Toronto.
Well, and like the planet from season 1 that they went to, what was the name of it again?
Pavel.
Yeah, like all that was color corrected. It made it much more blue than it was in real life. And it seemed like the Quagen planet was, it's like they applied a bit of a sepia tone to it or something, because it was very brown. So I don't know why they couldn't do that. I don't know, but
they could switch Tilly's uniform color in the last episode.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're going to talk about Tilly at some point here. Jeff, what about you? X-Force 11.
The design, the whole thinking, the design of the comm badge, the Delta. It's just the whole desire to put everything into one. I understand that technology wise, but it's so hard to see unless you're up close.
Yeah.
Having the pips on the badge,
it's unnecessary.
Well, you basically have to be so close up to see, like, okay, do I need to salute this person? Yeah, they're the same rank, and then it's just, it's all in there. So having that aspect of it just didn't really make sense to me. Have the ranking on the uniform so it's visible, and have the Delta a little more visible on the communicator, so that it can be a throwback, it can be a whatever, but it just, that practical design aspect of it just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
or is it on purpose that ranks are less important in the future, that they want to?
No, the uniforms
have to have a structure.
That was my point. That I was going to say, in the new uniforms, there is a rank on. There are pips there. We see that, so it's not a question of them not being on the uniform. It's just that they weren't on Discovery's uniform. So I don't know, but yeah, I had problems with it as well. And you see that thing I screen grabbed from one of the Ready Room episodes where they show the badges, and it's like it just all looks like a Gaussian blur was applied to the badge. You can't make out anything, and like the difference between, say, an enlisted and a fleet admiral, you can barely tell the difference. So I think that I'm hoping that they look a little more pronounced in season 4. Robert, what about you? What would you like to de-highlight?
I would not take the badge as the biggest one, but I thought about that as well. And I always had the problem with Disco, what Jeff said with, do I need to salute this person? Because once you have gone through any kind of service of that kind, that this is a topic. Do I need to salute that person or not? And so from that point of view, I have always had a little bit of a problem with what they did in Discovery. That said, I think the biggest problem for me was the detached nacelles, because I have no clue, and they didn't explain it, or they didn't say or anything what they're good for, other than looking good and looking futuristic. But otherwise, they make a big point out of having detached nacelles, but they never say
explain why.
or
Why
other
cool.
than wow, cool. It's nothing useful. And actually, I would see it as rather problematic, because you need to make sure if they're detached, they still move together with the whole ship.
Yeah.
And then when Ovo needs to climb up, they're connected again when they're in warp. So apparently they connect back when they're in warp and stuff like that. They never explain it.
Yeah.
So for me, this was just a gimmick to look cool, but otherwise it makes no sense.
I agree.
So I think that's the biggest thing for me. A secondary thing.
If you see what Booker ships can do with all the detached parts, it has an advantage to shape your ship in different shapes.
But Book ship always attaches again. It just rearranges and attaches again.
By the way, I'm going to highlight. I should have highlighted Book ship as a big, cool thing from this season. Yeah.
And a secondary thing is a story thing with we already talked about her, but Osira, with this switch back and forth from being a cardboard villain to suddenly having some structure in the penultimate episode.
Yeah.
And having a whole interesting, meaty story behind her, and then in the last episode, she's back to cardboard villain. That didn't really fit together for me.
It didn't. I agree with you. It was like, okay, first she's a pirate, then she's a leader of, this galactic superpower, and then she dies and the whole superpower just, falls apart. I 100% agree with you, Robert. That did not work at all for this season. Fred, what about you? Oh, we already got
apart from Suniqua's whispering. I didn't like the Sukal story. I did like the Sukal actor who acted like Doug Jones. He did a very nice job in portraying this person, but the whole story I didn't like. I did like the background because it's inspired probably by MC Escher, which is a Dutch artist.
Oh yeah,
with all the stairs, etc. But the whole explanation of the burn and this almost psychedelic kind of story there, I didn't like that at all. It was a nice trick to give several actors there another race. That was nice, just to see Doug Jones and to have Suniqua as what was she, Trill, I believe. That was nice. And the one thing I was a little bit disappointed, because you all are disappointed about the multifunctional combat. I'm a bit disappointed in 930 years that you don't connect that just to your brain.
Yeah,
that you think of something that should be possible in 930 years.
I would agree. I would agree with that. Jeff from Idaho, what about you? Anything?
I didn't really care for the whole Adira Gray thing. I mean, not just the potential technical flaws of I still, as much as I've watched DS9, I still don't totally get the whole Trill symbiont, whatever. I mean, I understand, but it's a memory, but then I'm really them, but they're just my memory. And it's just always weird to me, but it feels like that storyline was crowbarred into the series for somebody's sort of project. I want to send this message. And it didn't really seem to support any of the story. So every time it happened, it was kind of other than maybe to give, Stamets some, humanity or whatever, but I think you could have done that a different way. But that whole little pod there, as much as I like Stamets and Hugh Culber, I love those two guys, but the Adira Gray thing just seemed to be really, really frivolous or something. I didn't quite get it. And it just took away from the story for me.
I was gonna bring that whole thing up. Like I mentioned that I love the Culber, Stamets, Adira stuff. And I like the Gray character. I just don't like how they've set it up. I don't think that it makes a lot of sense in, like, why not just make Gray the host that was supposed to get Tal, and for whatever reason it went into Adira instead, and them just be together and make Gray an actual, like, physical character, like making him this, I don't know what he is. There's just so many, like I said, like I think I said in the episode, they'll take him to the mycelial network and and reform him just like they did Culber. It almost seems like that's how they're going to make it happen, but it still, I just don't get it. It does feel tacked on and problematic on how they did them. So I like the character, I like the relationship. I just don't like how they did it.
Yeah, I think Gray was not even planned in the beginning from what I gathered, because they said they originally had Ian on for the role that became Adira.
Oh.
And then they liked Ian enough to still keep him on, but took Blue for Adira because they liked Blue better for that role. And basically then I guess they only wrote the Gray role after that because they wanted to keep Ian on. So that's how it sounded to me. But I think they put themselves into a really strange place now, because they have to make Gray a real person again, because they have this whole metaphor of making trans and LGBTQ people seen. This whole metaphor of making them seen, they put that into the last episode.
Yeah.
So they really have to do it. On the other hand, for a Trill to be fulfilled, all those personalities need to be in the Trill symbiont and have a symbiotic relationship in the symbiont. So for that to be resolved, Gray needs to be part of Tal. But on the other hand, they need to separate him out because of this other thing that they put themselves into. And now I don't think they can resolve it in a good way in either direction. Maybe they have an idea, but it's hard for me to see how they can do it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's difficult. Kim, what about you?
I think the episode I liked the least was the Earth episode. I don't know. I couldn't get into that. But I think in terms of like a disappointment that I had in the story or in the season was in that penultimate episode, right at the end, when the little dots came out as having the sphere data. I was like, oh my God, that's so awesome. I was so excited. And then nothing happened. They didn't take back the ship.
Yeah.
I mean, they did that thing right at the end where they saved, or one of them saved Owo, and that was great. But they didn't do what I thought they were going to do. I thought they were going to play a bigger role, and I was really bummed about that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As a huge swing and a miss, they set it up so that it would have been a big plot point from that episode, and they did nothing about it. Yeah.
Oh, they were cannon fodder.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a complete waste for a supercomputer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Ruthie, what about you?
I think I've already expressed my displeasure. I'll pass.
All right. Command structure for me. This whole thing again about them not explaining, like, who's the chief engineer, who's the chief medical officer, and Tilly being first officer. I just can't. It just doesn't make any sense. I like her being in that position, but you don't make an ensign first officer. It's just not believable.
Well, if they had said as part of the command training program, they give her the interim position until they find a real one.
Okay, yeah.
Then it makes sense, but they didn't really go there.
No.
They didn't.
No.
That was a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
I would have totally bought that had that been the case. I would have been like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Yeah, and it even had influence on how you look at Mary Wiseman, who did a very nice job in trying to portray it. But because this was actually an impossible position, you put your actor actually in an impossible position.
Yeah.
No-win scenario, basically.
Also, they wrote her as an assistant for instead of a first officer there for a little bit. Once she takes on the captain role, I think they wrote her perfectly.
Yeah.
But in that phase where she was the first officer, they wrote her as an assistant, not as what we always have seen as a first officer.
Right.
Yeah. So the burn was a mess. I think it didn't work to me. It was basically, although a nice science fiction kind of story, a child crying out, causes
I disagree a little bit, Brian. I think the idea of the burn, so losing all the dilithium, losing a lot of ships throughout the Federation, was not such a bad idea, I think.
No, it wasn't.
The result, how they resolved it and what the cause was a flawed.
That's what I mean.
But the basic idea that this disrupted the Federation was I think, a very good idea.
I don't think anyone is disputing that the disruption of the Federation was inevitable. I think that's pretty much like things fall apart. That there's no way to avoid that. So I don't think anyone has said that they disbelieve that the Federation fell apart or they disbelieve that the burn happened. I think the reason behind the burn is super problematic.
Yeah.
I think they were infatuated with this Ursula Le Guin story, with this where one child basically has everything on the shoulders that makes the whole society be one way.
Yeah.
And so they wanted one child to be the core of everything that has gone wrong, basically. And I think they became so infatuated with that idea that they just had to stuff it in somehow, and it didn't work as well as they thought, I think.
Yeah.
It was a great idea, but it didn't work out that well.
Yeah, because they'd set the precedent for there being problems with subspace and problems with warp drive that they could have leveraged or even taken another tack on it. But like Fred said, it was a good idea. It's just how they decided to wind it up and resolve it left me kind of going, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have liked it better if that child pressed the button and that caused the dilithium nursery to give off some signal or something like that, because then it would have made more scientific sense.
Or the ship being there, or something a little more than.
Because I mean, this whole thing with dilithium having some connection to subspace makes completely sense, because that also lets us retrofit why you need dilithium as a catalyst in a warp drive, and for a Romulan drive as well, because they all need subspace to achieve faster than light travel, and that the signal goes through the whole galaxy in a very short time makes sense in subspace as well, because subspace communication can't be that fast. That all makes sense. Just that it's the feelings of the person that is a bit contrived for me. As I said, if it's pressing a button and that causes the ship to give off a signal, and the lithium nursery gives off the subspace signal because of that, that would make more sense overall.
Like if they were doing some kind of experiment or something, some kind of, something other than like this child was changed in utero and therefore had control over subspace and dilithium. That I just.
Yeah. And for that matter, how come it didn't shatter the planet? Right. So it shattered everyone, all the other dilithium, but why didn't it shatter the planet?
Just not the dilithium that was right next to it.
Yeah. But then I guess that it was only dilithium that was in use.
Dilithium that was in use, or this planet maybe was proto-dilithium and only converted to real dilithium because of that.
Or the dilithium in a warp drive is attenuated differently than it in its natural dirt-bound, unmined state.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was true because all the ships that were not active but had dilithium, but it was not their warp drive was not active. They didn't explode, and they remained having their dilithium.
Yeah.
But I need to say, everything that we're saying here for me is very nitpicking because overall,
Sure.
I really liked it, but you can do a lot of nitpicking on a lot of stuff, of course.
We're Star Trek fans.
Yeah,
that's what we do.
That's just what we do.
Yeah, but on the other hand, Robert, you're completely right, because if they did it like you said, it would have been more acceptable, probably to all of us.
If it was Star Wars, we would say, "Oh, it's the Force, it's magic, it's fine."
Yeah. The other thing I'll bring up that people haven't brought up is the whole Saru, not Saru and Sakal, but Saru going off the ship, and how it really in that last episode didn't do a good job of explaining it, or like maybe there were scenes that they had to take off because of COVID, and they had to cut it short, but there should have been some kind of scene between Burnham and Saru kind of explaining, or maybe offer the captaincy to her, from Saru. It just, to me, they didn't do a really good job of that. And I think the fact that they changed Tilly's colors, I think, if anything, hammer that home, assuming it happened because of there was confusion, whether and how are they going to bring back Saru? Like, is he going to be a captain somewhere else? Is he I can't see him making him first officer. That's kind of crazy.
Could
but
be
maybe
an ambassador.
Maybe he could be an ambassador. Maybe, I don't know, but
I'm sure they have a story on that.
It'd be way more in his wheelhouse than captain.
But who promoted him to captain? Actually, he just took over.
Self-promotion.
Self-promotion
by vote.
Discussing this with Burnham, who is going to do it, because Pike was gone. So who is going to do it? So in that sense, Burnham is now appointed by the admiral as a captain. Actually, Saru was never appointed by anybody.
Yeah, well, Saru was appointed first officer by Pike.
Okay.
And when the captain's gone, the first officer assumes.
Yeah, but are you then becoming a captain, or are you becoming an acting captain then?
He was already first officer.
Yeah, okay, but not
Discovery.
a captain.
Yeah, right. He was already.
He was already first officer before Pike showed up.
Was a first officer and the Lorca as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, then your captain is gone.
But when they're out of time and they didn't really have that connection for a while to Starfleet because they couldn't find them, they weren't part of the Federation, and I mean, I think they had to do that to appoint a leader and just say, okay, now you're captain. I think it was important.
I thought they said that he's acting captain.
I don't remember.
I think he did. But that's
and perhaps LT can explain that to us. But
that's the real world precedent. The
difference between the rank as a captain and being the leader of a ship.
Yeah.
Also having the the title as captain instead of the rank as captain.
Because see, real world, you can be the captain of like smaller vessels and your rank will be commander.
Yeah.
Most destroyers don't have a full bird. And coming from the Army side of the house, a captain in the Navy is the same as a colonel in the Army. And they wear birds. They have eagles as a rank. So that's my baggage there. But yeah, if you're a commander of a destroyer or a patrol ship that's smaller than a capital vessel, you are the captain, but you're not a captain.
Yeah. And what happened then to Burnham here? She is captain and captain.
I look at it as far as Saru goes, is that he was first officer, so technically he had dibs. the rank. Yeah, he had dibs because you always have chain of command that, like I was saying, it didn't have a problem with Tilly being first officer if everybody else above her was gone. If there was nobody of higher rank, because I wish James was here because he could explain the Navy bit of it. You may not pull somebody who is higher rank of another department if they're already a department head, but if, the manure has already struck the air impelling device, then you're going to go by who's on the boat, who has rank, who's the next in line. And it may be the chief engineer that is now captain because they're the last ranking person in chain of succession.
Yeah, that reminds me so much of this DS9 episode in start of season 6 or something, when Jetsia is
spoilers.
I'm not talking about the story, just this simple scene when Jetsia is in command of the Defiant and everybody calls her captain.
Oh, right.
And Nog says so that and they explain to Nog that when you are in the big seat, then you're called captain, even though you don't have the rank. And then Nog says, so when everybody above me is gone and I'm sitting in the chair, everybody needs to call me captain as well. And someone says to him, if everybody above you is gone and you're sitting there, nobody's left.
Nobody's left.
Captain.
Was someone going to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the Tilly first officer thing a little bit more.
Yeah.
I know we all look at it from the perspectives that we have and our own experiences. I don't have military experience, but I have a lot of experience in business and in leadership and in managing and promoting people. And from that perspective and from my own experiences, the Tilly thing made so much sense to me, that she was given an opportunity. She was looked at as someone that Saru trusted. And they kept making these little points about why she was trustworthy to him. Like there was the whole thing where she told him he needed to tell on Michael when she did that rogue mission. And I think that informed him quite a bit that she was going to follow the book, but she was also going to be someone that he could trust. And he already knew that she had designs on a higher leadership position. And so he took this chance to offer her an interim position, not a true, promotion, but an interim position. And it's something I've done in my own work, something very similarly. It's not military, though. I can't look at it militarily because I have no experience in that world. But from the leadership perspective, that's exactly what I would have done and have done in my career. So that stuff made a lot of sense to me. But when people get all upset about the military part of it, I'm like, okay, you can get upset about that, but I just look at it differently.
And to be fair, Tilly mentioned that she's only an ensign and she doesn't feel like she should belong there.
And she didn't at first, like you all said, she was acting like an assistant in the beginning. Of course she was. She didn't feel like she belonged there. But when the chips were down, she realized she had to step up and be a leader, and she did.
Yeah.
I was disappointed that she didn't tell Owo, continue the mission. That's an order.
Yeah. We'll circle back to Discovery in a minute, and with Kyle not being here, I did want to touch on Lower Decks specifically because you may we talked about it a little bit on the podcast. Ruthie did go back and watch Lower Decks. So just in
why
general,
are we making a big deal about this?
Oh, I know, because it was shocking.
Because he brought it up on every podcast.
Oh my gosh.
Like Ruthie doesn't want to watch it.
It's a cartoon.
I didn't say I would never watch it. I just said I didn't want to podcast about it. And
to back
Brian
up Ruthie
took this as a mortal offense.
I have to
not mortal.
Back up Ruthie. I'm sort of with her with the whole like cartoon thing. I never got any of those. That being said, my son started watching Discovery with me, and then for whatever reason started watching Lower Decks, and he said, "You really ought to watch Lower Decks. It's a really, really good series." So it's on the list. But in general, the cartoon thing, like I just like all the Star Wars, like Clone Wars and all that. It's just not for me. So I will back you up on that, Ruthie. I am definitely not in the cartoon genre either.
I was cautiously optimistic, but I mean, if it had sucked, I wouldn't have been surprised. Kyle, although he was willing to podcast about it with me, had certain reservations, especially after that first episode. I started doing a rewatch of it this week. Well, I say rewatch. Basically, I watched a bunch of episodes in one day. Didn't finish it yet. I'll probably do that next week or something. But I felt like after watching the whole season, watching those first few episodes, it really does work in ways that I didn't think it worked on first watch. But now that I know the characters more and stuff like that, I'd still like to know why Boimler has purple hair, but that's a nitpick. No, it's not a nitpick. It's just curiosity. But I thought that show worked so well, and
hair because it was a cartoon.
Yeah. Anyway, I was surprised. Anyone else want to say anything about Lower Decks? I don't want to talk long about it, especially without Kyle.
Just I waited for being able to legally watch, and so I only watched it about 2 weeks ago or something.
Yeah.
When we finally got it, and I binged it all in one day, I think. Which with those short episodes is totally possible.
Yeah.
I had heard all the podcasts about it. I had seen clips, so it was not like I shut myself away to not get spoiled or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But when I actually saw it, it made a whole lot more sense to me. I mean, I already knew what was coming, of course, because I had listened to all that. But I think the last episode was really deep in story.
Yeah.
And I really loved that. And overall, it's a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
And if you don't take it too seriously, I think it's a whole lot of stuff to enjoy. I think it's not a kid's cartoon by far. It's definitely an adult cartoon, but I think in the first few, they needed to get their grip on how to tell stories and how this all works, and also do some world building.
Mm-hmm.
But then as the season got going, it got better and better.
Yeah.
I like Mariner, and I like the interaction between Boimler and Mariner, how they played off on each other. It was funny. But perhaps you shouldn't podcast about it. Just see it and then it's gone.
Yeah. Well,
Kyle, enjoy it as long as it takes, and then.
As far as I know, Kyle will be back with me for season 2. If not LT, I'm going to ask you. I won't ask Ruthie, but if she ever wants to guest, she can.
And since my remark of just now, I probably won't give feedback even.
Get you to do the choo-choo dance, man.
Yeah.
No, the choo-choo-choo dance.
They did that extra chew. It was amazing.
And get the T-shirt.
And the question that we have at this point is like, which Star Trek are we going to receive next? Like, it could be Prodigy, because the work on Prodigy has been going throughout all this. It could be Lower Decks season 2. It doesn't look like it's going to be Picard, because they're still not filming that. But Discovery's been going since November, so that could be the next. Although, if I had to put my bets on, I would say it's probably going to be Lower Decks, Prodigy, Discovery, and then maybe Strange New Worlds. So, which I believe has started.
Yeah,
if it's about to start, or it's either started.
It's about to start. They said somewhere in February.
Yeah, because I imagine that in the next couple of days, once it does get started, we'll start hearing like casting announcements and stuff like that.
And they got Anson Mount back in the uniform for that.
Yeah.
That daggum commercial.
And Ethan Peck.
And yeah.
Actually, looking quite forward to that, because if you ask me which season is better, 2 or 3, I get into much difficulty to choose, because I like being away from canon in season 3, but I liked so much the Spock Pike number 1 thing in season 2.
I don't have to think about it. It's 2, and I put it all on Pike. I would follow that character through everything. He just made such a lasting impression on me that I probably need to go back and watch the rest of Hell on Wheels that I haven't seen. Don't know if I want to see that Marvel show, because I've heard so many bad things about it. But
you can skip the Marvel.
But
Marvel show is that?
Was it Inhumans?
The Inhumans.
Oh, yeah. The Inhumans. That's on my list, but it's not very high up on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to say, I agree with you, Brian. If you would ask me what is the nicest Star Trek captain, I would say Pike.
I thought that he was the captain that we needed. He would have been a great captain to see in 2020. Just because we need characters like him. He's like the Picard that I wish we got in Picard, but we didn't get, and that was a disappointment. We basically didn't get that kind of Picard until the end. But like that pompousness, that self-importance, hubris that we got in Picard.
What you mean to say is confidence.
Yeah.
Well, I was so happy about the Picard we got, because I always feared that it would be just the week-old man that's going to die, and he dies at the end of season 1, because I always expected it to be that Patrick Stewart wants to do something like this awful X-Men movie he did, that I don't even remember the name of, where he was just
Logan
died. Logan, yeah.
I love Logan.
I know you did.
I so much hate superheroes to get weak and just die. That's just not superhero story for me, and that so didn't fit. You can do that in something else, but it completely didn't fit the superhero story for me. And I feared that we just see the same thing in Picard, where he just gets old and confused and dies.
Yeah.
And at least we got something else, where, I mean, he wasn't the Picard we knew when he started off, but at least he wasn't the confused guy. I mean, I had some fear that he dies, and they put it in.
Well,
I think in the original story he probably died at the end of season 1, but they had this trapdoor in their minds to be able to change that to something else, and that's what they did.
Yeah, for that matter, why didn't they make? Well, I guess they didn't want a body, but why couldn't they make a data body? I don't know.
He couldn't be the same Picard, because he is a little old guy. I mean, they had to do something different.
No, I didn't want the same Picard. The problem that I had with him throughout so much of that season was the leader, the diplomat, the accomplished, captain that we saw wasn't there. It was like some empty husk of a captain that we saw, and someone who felt like he was entitled rather than actually, being in the esteem that he should have been. But, then again, I know we're not really talking about Picard, but that whole thing that he, basically grabs all his toys and goes home, I didn't think would be something Picard did anyway. So,
but that's what we do in the new Star Trek. Yeah. That's exactly what we do in all the shows now. The new shows is we build, we tear them down so that we can build them back up. They're very emotional, personal stories now that run the arc of the shows, and that's just not what it used to do.
Yeah,
we're playing with a lot of story tropes overall, like this. Break them down to build them up again. Having this mystery box, having this sudden reversal stuff, all those things. We just push all the story tropes in that you can do, and all the artificial elements and how you can build stories, which reminds me such a lot on this Voyager story where they talk about exactly those things and how those are not always the best ways to tell a story. But yeah,
it's what
I feel like Burnham. That's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. We did it with Burnham too, and I think those are the stories that are interesting to those writers.
The issue I had was that I felt that after listening to the book that sets up the series, which is not technically canon, but whatever. But I felt
fantastic book, which I've said 100 times.
Yeah, I felt that we needed to see that on screen.
Yes.
In order to understand where he was in the series. And since we didn't, you didn't have that understanding of where he was and how he was broken and what's going on.
Right. It felt very jarring.
If you didn't, I think Ruthie brought it up in the podcast, you shouldn't have to read the book in order to understand what's on screen. You need to see it on screen in order to understand it. And that's where I think if they had taken some of that from the book and put it in the series, then we might, have appreciated it.
And I think that's why we liked Pike so much, because Pike was good from the get-go. Mm-hmm. That he got better, but he was still good. And I agree with what you said, Kim, about that's the thing that they do now. And I think that being older, I see some of those things in myself that, I don't snap back from things like I used to, and I don't run, jump, and do like I used to when I was younger. And I think that the thing that disappointed people about Picard is we wanted to see the Picard we were used to, because I don't find it very entertaining to get kind of my nose rubbed in what I know is reality. Well, especially just personally, having seen the decline of my dad as he got older before he passed away, that, the guy that I idolized that could do everything, seeing it where his memory's slipping and his physical faculties are slipping. And I guess that was sort of what hit it with me with Picard, is I don't want to see my hero, getting old.
Yeah. I had to go through that with my dad as well. And it was heartbreaking.
I went through that with my dad as well, but I liked this, and I didn't need the book, and I thought it was more close to real life, and I didn't need the hero. I was expecting things like this, and as you say, LT, it's too close to real life, but that's why LC. LC from, I made that mistake before. LC from LT. No, the other way around.
LT from LC from NT.
Nevertheless,
Windows
I think for me it was not necessary. We had a big discussion, Brian, about it in the beginning. I would have found it very improbable that he would be our Picard at the beginning at that age.
Yeah.
I would have found it the other way around. I would have disliked that.
I don't think I gave you enough credit on the podcast with bringing up those comments during the season about, like, talking about, your dad and, going through that. And then also the comments about, like, what you went through at school where, you were in that club and you got this disenfranchised and all that. Those are great comments. And going back, listening to the podcast, it's like, I didn't say what I should have said, but anyway, it's on record now. So, anyway, we should probably start wrapping things up. We've been going at it. I think recording about 2 hours and 10 minutes, I think. But I do want to.
Well, before we go, I just wanted to say that Boimler on Lower Decks is also the same guy as the main character in The Boys.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, I kept hearing his voice and thinking, man, that sounds familiar. I was watching The Boys at semi the same
Jack
time.
Quaid, right?
Yeah, and I was like, oh my gosh. Anyway.
Just gonna say as we wrap it up, thoughts about season 4? Anyone wanna?
Well, I already said a little bit. I really wonder if going to bring dilithium to the whole galaxy will get us a model which is similar to the original Trek and discovering new worlds, etc.
Yeah, that was a point that I brought on during the podcast. It seems like it would be an episodic kind of thing where they would go to this world and go to that world and try to chain things together, no pun intended, to create a new federation.
It looks like that. I wouldn't be surprised if we are all going to expect that, and it's going to be in a complete other direction.
Well, I have heard this past week that apparently there isn't going to be any kind of classic villain in season 4. It's going to be, more of a, like, I don't know, situational kind of thing that they run into. Not so much like parts of season 2 and season 3 were, but both of them ended up having a villain. Control being the one for season 2, and Osira being the one for season 3.
Two bad villains.
Yeah, well, I liked Control, but I didn't think it was perfect. I liked Osira even less. So
I liked Control less than Osira even.
Okay.
What I also probably will like in season 4 is the straitjacket that they don't have, in the sense of canon, in the sense of going to worlds, finding new races, everything, that they are free actually to build what they like.
I would like them to bring in new worlds that have not been part of the Federation. But at the same time, I mean, why didn't we see Earth in that final episode? We should have seen them at least talking to Earth,
Well, if you look at
hopefully
this,
we'll see that at the beginning of season 4. I don't know.
Although they are partly humans, if you look at this Federation, it is the Federation, and Earth is just as similar as Kaminar as any other world. It's just a world, and if they don't want to join, they don't want to join. If Kaminar don't want to join, or for instance, the Trills, they didn't want to. Yeah, we are all attached to this Earth. I understand that, but in this Federation, I see Earth as just a planet as all the other ones. And if Earth is not wanting to join, well, they don't.
Tough.
Well, I think they need to bring in Earth again into the Federation to make, if they want to make things fit again.
Yeah.
The question is when that will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But as I'm talking already, I already pretty much said it. I think that it would be interesting. I'm not sure what they're writing, but it would be interesting if, when going out to all those places and basically trying to get them into the Federation again, they find out what it was that actually made the Federation fall apart originally. I think that would be an interesting story there. Whatever that is, I have no clue. But that would be an interesting thing to develop there, I think.
Well, we get to see them visit, planet Outback 4 and go, hey guys, we have dilithium for you.
Long time no see.
And you get the angry people going,
right, we're not going to.
Where have you been for the last 800 years? We waited for you. Maybe even do like a Pacific cargo cult.
Hopefully they visited before 800 years.
That they built, they built little wooden shuttlecrafts and little wooden bases, hoping that the Federation would come back and bring them new things.
I really wonder if they will go then, if they discover new worlds, what is left of the Prime Directive, if they're really going to ride that horse again and again, or that they just connect to more primitive cultures without the Prime Directive in the way.
Prime Directive was always there just to be broken, just to be mentioned always in the context of we're breaking it.
It was a plot device.
True.
Or not, right? To create conflict.
Yeah.
But it was always,
okay. But that was the rarer occasion. Usually it was, well, the Prime Directive would say that, but we can't really.
Yeah, right.
We're not supposed to interfere, but
yeah.
Okay. In that sense, I hope we don't see it, because that's a trope, that's a card that has been played too many times.
I disagree. I think it's not the Federation without the Prime Directive. Whether or not they break the rules all the time or what, you gotta have your values and stick to them. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
Well, they might do the thing that they do with the characters where they have to rediscover why they needed the Prime Directive. Maybe they'll go and make some mistakes. Like, we don't need it. And then they'll be like, oh, crap. Maybe we do.
Well, and like they seem like they're going to, they have a source for spore pilots now, a world that was, in the definition of the Prime Directive had been violated, not by the Federation, but by the Emerald Chain. So, but they're a source of pilots now. So you're going to potentially, you could build a fleet where you have pilots that are, from this planet that
we should be leaving alone.
Yeah, but we need them,
Right.
It ends up being like the Navigators Guild in Dune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so the Qui-Gonnian Navigators.
There was one thing I was going to bring up earlier that I forgot to bring up. I'll bring it up now. That whole thing from, I think was it the second to last episode where, the second to last episode, we can't get to Federation headquarters, but there's this subspace corridor, that the couriers use that, we can just go through that. And it's like, what the hell was that?
It's really dangerous.
Yeah. It's, what was it? Was it like another transwarp conduit, or was it something else? And it's like, well, where did that come from?
The small, highly reconfigurable ship makes it through barely, and the huge ship makes it through without issue.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that whole thing, like, I guess my problem with the whole warp drive issue is they set this warp issue up in the next generation, but in whatever 800, 700 years since then, no one has thought about it and had any kind of maybe we should come up with an alternate form of travel. And they only did because they started running out of dilithium. I didn't really find that to be very believable, honestly. In a society full of people who are innovators, that no one has come up with something that rest on their laurels, basically. That didn't make any sense.
Nobody came up with the spore drive in 930 years either.
But it almost feels like, going into the future from now and saying, well, we can't drive cars anymore because somebody blew up all the gasoline, so we're screwed. There's no more gas. Like, wouldn't we have figured out a different engine that wasn't like combustible on gas? Maybe.
It felt a little bit too heavy-handed for exactly what you're saying, for like, we need to give up our reliance on petroleum. No arguments. I think we do, but can we have made some kind of advancement in technology in the hundreds of years since then? I don't know. I just kind of thought that they were using that trope for the sake of it rather than, I don't know.
Yeah.
So we have detached nacelles, so we don't know how to do any kind of thing anymore in a good way when it comes to propellant, because our nacelles are detached. We don't know what to do with them anymore.
yeah, exactly.
Well, and there's the point that the Romulans don't use the same warp technology that the Federation does. They use a singularity drive.
Yeah, but it still uses dilithium from what we heard in Next Generation.
Okay.
But still, I mean,
I think that drive was experimental.
I don't. Well, that drive
Romulans use singularity for everything.
Yep.
In all their ships.
Anyway, I don't know.
I don't know.
All right. Unless anyone has anything else, I think we should probably wrap things up, at least as far as the recording. Any final thoughts? Or 3, 2.
We need to do this again.
Yes. We will not take so long in between this and next time. We'll
I blame COVID.
Well, and I don't know. I was pretty pooped out during this season. That's why it took me so long to get that last episode out.
Blaming COVID. I mean, I do all day this actually.
Yeah, I do not.
It's a convenient scapegoat that we can all use.
Yes, Ruthie.
Next time we'll meet at the top of a metaphorical mountain.
Somewhere in Austria, they have mountains, I believe.
Yes,
not in the Netherlands.
That is a good point. I mean, you guys in Austria and the Netherlands can't, or maybe you will actually. By the time this Paramount Plus will be starting in 4 weeks, so that's going to be.
But right now they're only launching it where they already had a streaming service.
Yeah.
So which means the Nordics and a few other countries where they already had something.
As far as I know, that's not going to affect where you guys see stuff now. So
it's a little different than with Disney Plus, where the Netherlands was a pilot country. Actually, we had Disney Plus as the very first one.
And I still haven't seen The Mandalorian season 2 yet, by the way.
Oh.
I know I have to. It's just
it is the way.
Yeah.
It is the way.
I just want to have Paramount Plus Europe and want to have all Star Trek there. So I can subscribe to one service and not two. Because I'm not doing anything else with those two services other than watch Star Trek.
What else is it that you subscribe to?
Netflix and Amazon Prime. And okay, I'm using Prime shipping because I already subscribed for watching Star Trek, but I rarely order anything there anyhow. So it would be cheaper to actually pay for normal shipping than to pay for Prime.
You should use Amazon more. I love Amazon Prime.
I don't want to use those big corporations. I want to use small businesses that are more local.
At this point, for me, it's like Jeff Bezos, take my money, because we use Amazon every single day for just.
I don't use it quite that often, but I use it a lot.
We get our groceries that way now. So
we do too.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, midnight.
Yeah, we're wrapping it up. So we won't stop the call, but we'll stop the recording. So everybody, just thanking you guys individually. Ruthie, LT, Robert, thank you for your first time here. Fred, Kim, Jeff, and Jeff, thanks so much. And we'll have this out to the Patreon subscribers in the next couple of days. And then we'll put it out on the regular feed probably in a couple of weeks. So, all right, with that, I'm going to stop the recording.